Ever get this like weird feeling? Like you're living in a movie. Everything's just a little too perfect, a little too
Oh,
shiny.
tell me about it. It's like we're all living in one big Instagram filter these days, right?
Exactly. Well, today's deep dive might just confirm those suspicions. We're tackling Jean Baudrillard, and he argued that what we call reality is actually a carefully constructed simulation.
Ah, Baudrillard, way ahead of his time, that one. What's wild is he was writing about this back when, like, the internet was still in its dial-up phase.
Seriously. Okay, so for those of us who missed that memo, who was this guy? Give us the Jean Baudrillard 101.
So, French philosopher, born back in 29, and he was obsessed with how we understand the world around us, especially with all the images and messages thrown our way, like the media, the things we buy, it all adds up, right?
Yeah, makes sense. He was basically saying all that stuff influences how we see reality.
Exactly. He dug deep into how those things, basically, all those signs and symbols become our reality, even if they're totally detached from anything real. And he did not shy away from controversy, let me tell you. Were some pretty impactful books, Simulacra and Simulation, that was his big one.
Heard of that one?
Yeah, it's kind of the Baudrillard deep dive. But he also wrote The Gulf War Did Not Take Place and America.
Okay, the Gulf War.
Yeah.
We're definitely circling back to that. But let's back up for a sec. When he said simulation, what did he actually mean? Like, was he talking Matrix-level simulation?
Kind of, but it gets even weirder. He said, we don't experience reality directly, right? It's all through representations. Think images, symbols, signs, even language itself. They all stand in for the real thing.
So, like, we experience the world through a filter, basically.
Exactly. But Baudrillard's point is that over time, those representations, he called them simulacra, those simulacra become detached from any real-world counterpart.
So it's like we're looking at a copy of a copy of a copy, and we've forgotten what the original even looked like.
You got it. And he believed this happens in stages. Like, there are levels to this simulation game. He laid out 4 main stages of simulacra, each one taking us further and further away from reality.
4 stages. Okay, this is where I'm going to need you to break it down. What's stage 1?
Stage 1 is the simplest. Think of it like a really good copy, like a photograph or a super realistic painting. It's still a representation, obviously, but it's close to the real deal.
Okay, that makes sense. Like, we see those all the time, but we know they're just representations. So what's next? What happens in stage 2?
Stage 2 is where things get interesting. Now, the image isn't just copying, it's starting to twist things, distort reality a bit. Think like propaganda posters.
Okay. So they're exaggerating features or leaving things out to create a specific message.
Exactly. Or even something like those super filtered photos everyone posts these days. The representation isn't neutral anymore, it's trying to shape how we see things.
So stage 2 is like entering the matrix.
Maybe not quite the Matrix yet, but we're getting there.
Uh-oh. Okay, so what is stage 3 then?
Stage 3 is where the copy starts to have a life of its own. It's no longer even trying to be a copy. It creates this whole illusion of reality, even if there's nothing really there.
Okay, hold on. I need an example because now I'm lost.
Think of something like Disneyland. It's this whole world meticulously crafted to make you feel like you're in a different place, a different time, but it's all a facade, right?
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like we're no longer just looking at copies. We're starting to surround ourselves with things that feel real, even if we know deep down they're not.
And that, my friend, leads us to the grand finale, stage 4.
Okay, hit me. What does Baudrillard say is the final stage?
Stage 4 is pure simulation. This is where the image, the symbol, whatever, it's completely disconnected from any real, it's like its own little world with its own rules, and we buy into it completely.
Hold on, I need a minute to process this. So you're saying there's stuff out there, images, stories, even experiences that are 100% made up with zero connection to anything real, and we're just cool with it.
Welcome to hyperreality. That's Baudrillard's argument in a nutshell.
Hyperreality. Okay, we need to define that one because that sounds intense.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's that state where we can't tell the difference between the real and the simulated anymore. They've basically become the same thing in our minds. And that, my friend, is where things start to get really interesting and a little bit scary.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how this gets a little dark. So how does this hyperreality actually show up in our lives? Give me an example.
Think about it. How much of your world do you experience through a screen these days? Your phone, your computer, the TV, it's all a curated version of reality. And then there's social media.
Don't even get me started on social media.
Exactly. It's all about presenting a certain image, creating a narrative, even if it's totally different from our everyday lives.
So you're saying that perfectly filtered Instagram feed, that reality TV drama,
Yeah.
that news article designed to go viral,
Yeah.
they're all contributing to this hyper-reality.
Bingo. And over time, that hyper-reality starts to feel more real, more true than the messy, unpredictable world we actually live in.
It's like we've become so used to seeing the world through these filters, we've forgotten what it looks like without them.
Which makes you wonder, what is real anyway?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it's about to get a whole lot more complicated. Okay, so we've talked about how those copies, those simulacra, they start to take on a life of their own, right? But I'm still stuck on how that plays out in the real world.
Well, think about it this way. It's not just about like pretty pictures and theme parks. Baudrillard argued that this whole blurring of what's real and what's simulated, it affects how we understand everything, even huge events, global events.
Which brings us back to that book title. The Gulf War did not take place.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Did he really mean that literally?
Okay, so crucial point here. Baudrillard wasn't saying Gulf War didn't happen. Like, obviously, there were soldiers, battles, the whole thing. It was a real conflict.
Okay, so what was he getting at then?
He was talking about how those of us who weren't on the front lines, how we experienced it. Think about it. We saw it all through the media, right? The news, images, sound bites, that was our Gulf War. And Baudrillard argued that this created a kind of hyper-real experience, something that's been sanitized and packaged for everyone watching at home.
So, like, instead of the actual war, raw and chaotic,
Yeah.
we got a cleaned-up version.
Exactly. Think about it like this. You can read a news article about a hurricane, get all the facts, the damage reports, but actually living through one, being in the middle of that chaos, that's totally different.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. And with the Gulf War, most of us were experiencing it through TV screens, so there was that distance.
Exactly. It was almost like watching a movie, right? Dramatic music, experts telling us what to think. It's all designed to create a certain effect.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's like we traded the real deal, the messy, complicated truth of war, for something that was easier to digest.
And that's precisely Baudrillard's point. He's saying by consuming this hyper-real version of the war, we're kind of participating in creating that distance. We let the simulation replace the real thing in our minds.
Wow, okay. That's kind of heavy thought. So it's not enough to just be aware of these simulations. We also have to be careful about how we let them affect us.
Right. And it's not just about war either. Think about how much we experience through screens now, our phones, social media, online news. It's constant.
Yeah, it's like we're never really off the grid, are we? So how do we break free from that? How do we start seeing things for what they really are?
Well, this is where Baudrillard gets practical. He says it starts with questioning everything. Who's giving you this information? What are their biases, their motives? What are they not showing you? Once you start asking those questions, you become a more active participant, you know? You're not just accepting what you're given blindly.
Okay, so question everything. But doesn't that lead to a different kind of problem? Like, at what point does questioning everything tip into just being, I don't know, paranoid?
That's a fair point, and Baudrillard acknowledged that. He knew that constantly questioning everything could be disorienting, even lead to, like, a sense of nihilism. But for him, it was better than blindly accepting whatever we're told.
So it's like finding a balance
Yeah.
between being critical but not getting lost in suspicion all the time.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that critical mindset, you know, being willing to challenge assumptions, be curious about how things work, who benefits from certain narratives, but also not getting so caught up in the questioning that you lose sight of what's real, what matters.
This is already blowing my mind, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. So if we accept that we're living in this world where simulations are everywhere, does that mean there's no hope for finding, like, real meaning? Is authenticity even possible anymore?
And that's where things get really interesting. Because Baudrillard wasn't just about tearing things down. He actually offers a path forward, a way to find meaning and authenticity even in this world that often feels artificial.
Okay, so we're living in this world of simulations, hyperreality, all that, but it can't be all doom and gloom, right? There's got to be a way out of this fun house mirror maze.
You'd think Baudrillard would be all doom and gloom, but he actually offers a surprisingly optimistic take. He said recognizing the simulation is actually the first step to, get this, liberation.
Liberation. Okay, now I'm really confused. How does seeing the simulation everywhere equal freedom?
Think about it this way. It's like once you realize it's all a game, you can choose how to play. You see the strings, you're not a puppet anymore. You can choose to buy into it, or you can say, nah, I'm good.
So it's not about escaping the simulation he knew that wasn't really possible, but it's about, like, engaging with it differently.
Exactly. Like, take advertising, right? We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us what we need, what we should want. But once you realize it's all just a carefully constructed illusion,
You can choose to ignore it.
well, ignoring it is one option. But you can also start to appreciate the artistry of it, the way they're trying to manipulate you, and maybe even find some humor in it.
So it's like, instead of being annoyed by ads, I should be impressed by the psychology behind them.
Maybe. But the point is, once you see it for what it is, you can make more conscious choices. Same goes for something like social media. We all feel the pressure to present a certain image, right? But what if we use these platforms to be more authentic, more vulnerable?
Okay, yeah, that would be a pretty radical act these days.
Yeah.
Posting an unfiltered selfie with a long rant about, like, how much you hate doing laundry.
Hey, why not? It's about taking back control, you know? Using these platforms to connect with each other in a more genuine way, rather than just playing into the same old simulations.
So it's about finding ways to be more real, even in artificial spaces.
Yeah.
To be more ourselves, even when everyone else is trying to sell us something or turn us into something we're not.
Now you're getting it. It's about finding those cracks in the simulation, those moments of true connection, those expressions of authentic self. Baudrillard would call those moments of seduction.
Seduction.
Yeah. He didn't see seduction as a bad thing. For him, it was about disrupting the established order, challenging those simulations with something unexpected, something real.
Okay, so maybe Baudrillard wasn't so pessimistic after all. He just wanted us to wake up a little bit, see the world with fresh eyes, and maybe even have a little fun with it all.
Exactly. He wanted us to be more than just passive consumers, simulations. He wanted us to become active participants, to find our own meaning, to create our own reality.
This has been an incredible journey. I feel like we've gone through the looking glass and come out the other side.
And that's what a good deep dive is all about, right? Challenging our assumptions, expanding our understanding, and maybe even changing the way we see the world and our place in it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, there you have it, folks. We've journeyed into the heart of hyperreality, questioned the nature of reality itself, and emerged with a newfound appreciation for those moments of authenticity, connection, and yes, even seduction that make life worth living. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep it real.